Hi everyone, Julie here. So we're going to talk about planning in your traveler's notebook. Now you probably saw the lessons that we already did on using a planner for your summer. But one of the really cool things about the traveler's notebook is that you can make it whatever you want it to be. So in addition to it being a memory keeping project, it can also be a planner. So I wanted to go over how I use planning as part of my Little Summer Joy project. You can see here that I'm using the Traveler's Notebook Company Traveler's Notebook size, like the standard. It's in centimeters, but it's about 4 inches by 8 inches. And I used the calendar, the blank calendar that we made. And the reason that we made it blank is because we wanted to be able to allow you to customize whatever month or day that you start this project, or potentially customize it for using in a travel notebook specific to a trip. So imagine that you were going on a trip that started on one month and ended in another. This calendar would give you a really nice, 6-week preview of the potentially the entire summer, or an extended trip, or any kind of time period that works for you. You can always use the last 2 lines just for journaling, or add in some pictures or something like that. So it really is customizable for whatever it is that you need. And then on the side here, you can see that there's lines, and then there's more lines underneath here. And those are just to add in any journaling or anything that you want. I like to do it at the end. So we'll see. I haven't decided if I'm going to use what I'm going to use those spaces for or not. So I started my book back on June 20th. So I went through with a blue Sharpie pen and I wrote in all the dates for all the days for June in like the green blue color. And then in July, I used like a blue to go through so that you could see the difference in months without it being overly obvious, and while still keeping the colors pretty consistent. I'm using mostly these stamps from Kelly Stamps, which have worked out so well. They're from her June release, I think. Jot that down. And you can see here like the little bullets. I'm using a ton. The car, you can see it there. But even some of the words, the sayings are really helpful and have been fantastic for this book. And for the ink, I'm using this neon ink that I found at Michael's. It is my love of all inks. Like as soon as I saw it, the colors were so me, and they're so summer, and they're so perfect for what I'm using them for in this book. So I obviously picked that up as soon as I saw it. And then the other ink that I'm using, and that's just on this particular layout, is the Archival ink by Ranger. You can't use it on the regular pages in the Midori because the pages are just a little too thin, and the ink is really strong, so it actually ends up bleeding through the pages if you use it on like a standard page. So what I did is I printed out this calendar on photo matte paper by Canon. So I used this paper to print out basically all of my Project Life stuff, but definitely anything for the Midori is in this Canon matte photo paper, and it's for my printer. And I love it because it doesn't have a lot of texture. It takes color really well, and as you can see, it's easy to write on, and it takes stamping really well, and it looks great. This is the pen that I use. It's the Staedtler Tri Plus Fine Liner, and it's amazing. You can write on photos with it. It is super fine, and I really like that, and it's what I've used for all the text here. So you can see that it works perfectly in this smaller format, which I really, really like. It's triangular. I don't know if you can see that, which is kind of cool. It actually makes the grip pretty nice to hold on to. So I really like that pen. I'm in love with all the supplies that I'm using right now for this, so you can see that obviously I'm having a lot of fun because I'm stamping like crazy in it. So I'll just go over what I've noted on this particular layout. And there is another way in which I incorporate planning into my album. So this is just the first of 2 different styles. So basically I like to look at the entire project through the course of a month. And you'll see like I'm noting my work days, days that we're picking up our farm share, when we went to the farm, when I had a meeting, mom's group meeting, we had a barbecue over at our friend's house and stuff like that. So I just put something, I try to put something in every day, just whatever the biggest thing of that day is. One day we went to see an old ship and the boys called it a pirate ship. So that was the day we went to the pirate ship. And I'll bring it a little closer so that you can really see the details. Yeah, so you can see that like the yellow ink doesn't show up as well from a distance, but it obviously takes to the paper really well. And I love the different contrast and the layering that comes from using this like series of inks that are all the same tone. So I'll just kind of get it in really close so you can see all my different days. We went on a road trip these 2 days and another road trip these 2 days. We were pretty busy this summer already. And then these are me planning ahead. I know what's happening on these days for the most part. Obviously there's other stuff that'll come up, so I can just write it in like I did up there and include it later. But it's really fun. I love looking at one, you know, how often we're doing stuff because it feels like we're doing a lot of things, and it's nice to kind of see that in a monthly format. But also, I just really love the colors, and I love having something like this that summarizes our whole summer right there on the pages of our book. So this is, let me just clip it in. So this is an example of my bullet journaling for this album. And I do this every week for the most part, unless I'm doing a mini album for some reason, which is happening for our 2 big trips this summer. And so those weeks I just didn't include in this album because I didn't want to get confused or overlap with in terms of subject, but I do reference them. So you can see here that basically I made these boxes, and I'll show you an example of a picture so that you can see it in progress. So to do this, to do the bullet journal, basically what I'll do is I have a little rectangle, which I can't find right now, but we're going to imagine that this is the rectangle. And I put the rectangle, or I put the ruler page, which is a traveler's notebook accessory, behind the page that I'm working on. Now you probably can't see that, but I can see through enough to like be able to tell you where the grid is. And so what I'll do is I'll take my cardstock rectangle and I'll line it up in a way that is consistent with the way I've been doing it since the beginning. And basically I'll just outline it with a pencil and I'll keep going through, and I like to leave, as you can see in this ruler, there's little check boxes. I always keep 1 checkbox of space in between, which is 0.5 millimeter or 0.5 centimeter. And I go through the page so that there's 4 boxes on each page. And then what I'll do is I'll go through with a pen, and I totally hand draw this. So I do use the ruler again as a guideline so that I can kind of see, because sometimes the boxes come back a little imperfect. And so what I'll do is I'll go through with my pen and I'll just outline each of the boxes. And then I go through again with a pencil and I'll write in using standard spacing, generally getting an idea for how big my words need to be for each day of the week. And you can see here I did it at the top of the box, and on the following week I did it on the side of the box because I was just liking the way that looked better, but I'll show you the both. So I'll get that a little bit closer so you can see. Yeah. So there you go. So you can see how I did my days of the week. And it's totally handwritten text. And I basically just went through with a pencil, and I did it with the pencil, and then once I got an idea of the spacing, I went through with a pen and rewrote it with the pen, and then erased all the pencil marks. So I always just use like a standard old pencil, not a mechanical one, because it tends to write a little bit softer than a mechanical pencil would, and that makes it easier to erase and it makes it easier to manage. So that's typically what I'll do. So I'll go through and do the days and the weeks, and I'll have that done well in advance. Let's see if I can find a week that I haven't finished yet. Okay, so here's an example. So you can see here, I'll stamp the month at the top of the page, and then sometimes I'll fill in the letters, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I will go through with watercolor and add watercolor, but I like to leave it open and wait until the week has kind of happened, or it's happening, before I make any design decisions. So I'll go through and I'll add in the days of the week, and there's always one extra blank box, and lately I've been using that for pictures, but we'll see. I might use it for an extra story if there's a story to tell that week. And so I'll go through, and again, just writing with this little board on the back, which has been totally amazing this year. I can generally get an idea of where the lines are, and as long as I get my first couple of lines in a similar space, I can keep going with block text that way. I'm not a perfectionist by any means, so you can see that each week or each day the entry is kind of like a little bit off. I tend to meander over to the right a little bit, but it's completely fine for me, and honestly, any extra space just gives me an opportunity to add some watercolor or washi or something else to put in its place. So the stamps I used are Kelly Perky, and I just arrange them on an acrylic block to spell out whatever month I'm working on, and then I put that on the book. Kelly Stamps also has a really awesome alpha set that came out literally like the day after I purchased these, and I was so grumpy about it because hers are a little bit taller and a little bit skinnier, and I'm really into the tall skinny letters, so or the tall skinny bold letters, but it's okay. I'm surviving, and I still like the way that these look. So for this particular week, I went through and I had done everything, and it was okay, but I just felt like it needed some color. So I went through with watercolors, and I lightly added some watercolor to the pages. And note that when you're adding watercolor to these pages, you don't want to use too much water. If you do that, it can tend to run on these with this particular pen, and I didn't know this. This was my first time using watercolor with this pen after the fact. It will run a little bit into the letters, so just good to know like what supplies you're working with, and maybe do a test run before you go through and ruin your pages, but whatever. So for this week, you can see down here that I added a tiny little photo strip to this block, and these pictures are 1 inch by 1 inch. And they're just totally random selections from this week. And I just really loved how that looked. I felt like once I added those pictures, it really brought the whole book together and just made it feel like, okay, this is what we did this week. And so in terms of what I talk about, sometimes it really is like a mini day in the life. It's like, this is what we ate for breakfast, and this is what we did that day. Sometimes it's more of a story. Sometimes it's a little less of a story. It just depends on what's happening that week. And so you can see this layout is my second week of writing, and I skipped a week because we were on vacation. And you can see this one's a lot cleaner, and it's a lot more organized, and I think that's just happened to be where I was when I was writing it, because it came out super neat. So I added washi to the top here, and again, just simple stamped title, hand-drawn boxes, and the days of the week with my own handwriting on this page. And I'm really happy I did this. I was all the way up to Friday, and I was printing up pictures for some layouts that come later in the book, and the way this picture printed out, which it's 1.5 inches square, it just happened to have this extra border at the bottom, and I thought that looks kind of like a mini Instax, and I'm completely in love with it. So I kept it that way, and I didn't really have anywhere to put it in my layout, so I ended up adding it to my journal, and I really love the way that came out, so I'll let you see it up close. How fun is that? So then I added a little stamp. This is the Kelly Perky stamp set, and I'm not sure what it's called, but it has an awesome little map of the US and some fun road trip type stamps that I was totally in love with, which is why I bought this set too, because I thought, hey, what the heck, if I'm paying for shipping, why not? And then of course Kelly Stamps came up with. So there you go. And I'm really happy with those stamps, honestly. I love the way they add it into my album, and I'm so super happy with like their look, the look and the layout and everything else. So you can see at the bottom here, I added, again, another photo strip. And these are, again, all 1x1 photos. And this is just, it's really just from our one weekend trip. I have a lot of pictures and layouts in there from that weekend trip because we took so many pictures, but it was a lot of fun. And I'm really happy I recorded it. And I also liked that, you know, most of the time it's not all four of us together. And this particular weekend, all of us were together and adventuring around and having fun on vacation, and it really was, in that way, something absolutely worth remembering. And so you can see here, this is just a week in progress, and this is what it looks like when I'm working on it. It's not until the end that I figure out what I want to do with this section and this section, and they kind of depend on what I'm doing. So I might even go through and add in another mini Instax type picture somewhere. We'll see. I really liked how that came out last time. So that is actually, so that's all in terms of planning for my Little Summer Joy album for this year. Now, because I've done this album a couple of years now, I also wanted to show you an example of what I did last year so that you can get an idea of just more of a variety of planning in your traveler's notebook. So last year I used a bigger book. This is a Moleskine Kahir plain notebook, and it's a little bit wider. I think it's 5x8 instead of, this is for comparison, this is the traveler's notebook. So you can see it's about an inch bigger or wider. And I made the same thing. I did my own little cardstock bullet, and it was 4 high, and it was obviously wider. And I did the same thing where I did a pencil, and then I outlined it in pen, and did the same thing where I wrote the days in pencil and then wrote over them with pen. And I like the way it came out. I obviously went through and added details and stuff like that, and I think that was really nice. But you can see I was a lot more brief last year. It was really just like, this is what we did today, and that is it. And it was not a big deal. So this year I'm definitely writing a lot more, but that's just kind of like the mind space that I'm in. So here's week 2 of last year, and again you can see this particular week I decided to do just 3 up, and I skipped a boring day. And again I went through the same process with pencil, then pen, then erasing it, and I added washi, and so you can see what it looks like if you add a little bit more space. This is another week, and again this is your bullet style journaling, and it's just to give you an idea of what it looks like. So now I'm in the groove a little bit more, and I'm starting to write a little bit more, and you can see I even added some more information to the title at the top here, and that was partly because I was referencing another book that I made this summer so that I would know to flip that's where the other book started. And so here's another week, and again I added watercolor to this one and some tape, and that might be it. Let's see. Oh no, there's one more. Okay, and so this one, again I did 3 up here and then 4 up here, so really it's totally up to you. You don't even have to use the system at all, but I liked how this came out in terms of being able to really summarize each day and capture these moments. Mostly because it's just fun, and it's fun to see what you do year to year. Especially now knowing like, well, where we are this year, it's so different than where we were at this time last year that it's kind of fun to compare. And so this is my last week, and again, it's the same thing as the previous weeks. You can see I did a little bit different with the title, and they're all different, and I like how they came out different because they kind of developed with my book, and you can see like the pages are a little wrinkly from all of the painting that I did in them, but that's just an example of a few different ways that you can add bullet journaling and planning to your Summer Joy notebook. There are a tremendous number of ways to do this, so truly it is just whatever works for you or whatever you like the most, but I definitely recommend considering at least adding the monthly calendar, because for me anyway, that's been the most fun addition to my book this year. And then adding the bullet journaling each day is now, you can see, obviously I like to write a lot, and it's a great way to add little summaries of your day into your album. So that's it, and thanks for watching.